Hi, friends! Welcome to my channel. My name's Marie. This is the third time I'm filming it because I've had audio problems. Let's jump into this film! Alright, what are we talking about? The documentary Toxic Beauty. It was directed by a woman named Phyllis Ellis. It was released in 2019. It's available for viewing on multiple platforms. However, it's also for rent and to buy on Amazon. I'll link my affiliate link below. Now, there's a lot to unpack here, but let's start with Rachel Carson, an environmentalist from 1963. We have to remember that children born today are exposed to these chemicals from birth, perhaps even before birth. Now, what is going to happen to them in their adult life as a result of this exposure? We simply don't know. Unless we bring these chemicals under better control, we are certainly headed for disaster. Let me give you a synopsis of the film. The film details and explores the ideas and consequences of cosmetic regulations. A large part of the film is devoted to women who are suffering from ovarian cancer and the possible link to baby powder. Part of the film explores litigation against Johnson & Johnson, one of the largest suppliers of baby powder. And interwoven into that narrative is a pre-med student named Mimi, who is seeking to discover her body burden from using personal care products. Now, interspersing and fleshing out the film are stories of women who are suffering from ovarian cancer and their use of baby powder, and also experts in the fields of epidemiology, medical research, endocrinology, public health. There's a lot of their testimonials woven through the film. Now, if you're just tuning in, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I was raised in part by a hippie who believed that, personal care products, we just didn't need much. We also probably didn't need bras or to shave our legs. So what I want to tell you is I've been researching a lot of this stuff for years, and if the film was your first foray into this topic and you're afraid and you want to dump everything out of your medicine cabinet, please don't do that. Subscribe to this channel and then come join us on something called @GreenBeautyTheory on Instagram, where we're going to be discussing a lot of these topics. Alright, now where to begin? I watched the film 3 times, and on the 4th time I took detailed notes. As I was trying to get my mind around what to say about the film, I went in search of a little information about the director, Phyllis Ellis. I found a great interview in the Canadian North Shore News about her. Ellis is a former Olympian. She represented Canada in field hockey in 1984. She herself used baby powder for 20 plus years. We used it like heroin, she admits. We poured it everywhere all the time. A few of the women developed ovarian cancer, and it made Ellis wonder if she too was at risk. I thought, if the most trusted brand in the world is linked to ovarian cancer, what else is causing us harm? This gives us great insight into her thought process and her why for making the film, and it also tells us her turning point. Most people in green clean beauty have a turning point in which they sought out cleaner personal care products, and oftentimes it's very deeply personal. And that's one thing about this movement is it is deeply personal to a lot of people. So I tried to narrow down what I thought were some of the central themes from this film, in case you don't make it to the end. So, number 1, ovarian cancer and the possible links to baby powder. Like I mentioned before, patient stories of how they used baby powder, how long they used baby powder, why they used baby powder, and their eventual involvement in litigation and some of the outcomes. They do touch on the litigation against Johnson & Johnson and some of the responses and evidences that were used. They touch on the idea of limited regulation and what's called a post-regulatory market in US and Canada for personal care products. They point out that women can be in some of the highest risk factor groups because of the amount of personal care products they're using, on top of the fact that hormonally they go through multi-developmental stages through their lifetime. They touch on some of the historical negative impacts of unregulated personal care products. And then they go into some of the warning signs, the red flags that are present in multidisciplinary fields that are related to personal care products, and yet no action or regulation is occurring. They identify some of the possible harmful ingredients like phthalates and parabens, basically endocrine disruptors is what they're talking about. And then they compare the unregulation and the denial of harm, which is what I feel like is key, to the tobacco industry, and how we saw red flags that were ignored and we were told it was safe over and over and over again for years and years and years with tobacco. And finally that was acknowledged. And so they draw that comparison. Now, to give it to you in a 1-2 punch, should you watch the film? Yes, I believe you should. There's a lot to talk about, there's a lot to think about, but like everything, a social media post you read from a cosmetic chemist, this documentary, take everything with a grain of salt. Apply your common sense, your reasoning, your intuition to how you interpret these things into your life. So here are some of my reflections. Talc contamination. Now, if you're new to this issue, I encourage you to go read a wonderful article by Milton Packard on MedPage Today. I've linked it below, that details, including with a timeline, everything that's gone on with some of this litigation against Johnson & Johnson. And then I encourage you to head to the FDA site to October of 2019, where, shocker, Johnson & Johnson's baby powder was found to contain asbestos. And if you read down and you see how Johnson & Johnson's response, you will see, like, a point continually made in the film is that they are denying and refusing to take any ownership of the problem. Interestingly enough, February 4th, the FDA was supposed to be having a public town meeting and talking about the testing of talc. Because not only has asbestos been found in baby powder, it's been found in kids' makeup. So now it really is becoming a post-regulatory market issue. The stories of the women with ovarian cancer and the possible link to baby powder will make you sick to your stomach. And this movie is definitely depending somewhat on evoking an emotional response in you to this issue. So I've seen already that, of course, this brings up some of those deep feelings, those deep personal feelings. And I've already seen constant chatter and arguments going back and forth between conventional beauty, denying everything in this film, and people responding to that. What I want to mention, though, is that one of the statistics at the end of the movie is that 11,000 people are involved in litigation right now against Johnson & Johnson. That's not a fluke. Take that with what you will. And again, Johnson & Johnson has still gone to extreme lengths to deny any responsibility. I want to quote Dr. David Kramer, who in the film they call the father of epidemiology, who said about baby powder, "This is not a healthful habit, it is a harmful one, and you should not use these products. It will get into the pelvic cavity, it may cause problems, and in some cases it will cause ovarian cancer." This man has been studying this topic for 40 years. I'm pretty sure he's more qualified to give us his opinion than a cosmetic chemist on Instagram. Just saying. Then I want to talk about one of the best points that I feel like the film makes by Dr. David Michaels, who is a professor at George Washington University School of Public Health, an expert in his field. Something I have seen is manufacturer of uncertainty, and trying to show that there are two sides to every story around science degrades all scientists. It makes it look like scientists are part of a debating society, but science isn't like that. Science is a search for the truth. But hiring people to say something specific, not because it is truth, but because it defends a product or corporation, really does make it hard for all scientists. One other thing that I think is interesting is why won't cosmetic chemists acknowledge what the medical field is saying about some of the red flags? They're continually pushing it, and it's getting aggressive in their way of denying that anyone who is suspect of endocrine disruptors. And so where is the search for the truth? Where is the scientific method when one field is saying red flag and the other field is saying you're a wackadoo? I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is. It's a question I have. I'm curious. All right, so the film does capitalize on fear-mongering. We just gotta say that. They're talking about a lot of extremes in there, where a lot of us that have been in green, clean beauty for a long time, we know it's not just personal care products. It is the water we're drinking, the paint we're putting on our walls, the toys our children are playing with, the pollution in the air. We can't just pin it on one thing. I want to quote Dr. Bruce Lanphier, Professor, Faculty Health Sciences of Simon Fraser University, who was asked, "Can you protect your kids from this?" And he responded, I'm paraphrasing, "No, there is just too much." All right, now let's delve into some of the ingredients. I'm really glad that they chose to focus on endocrine disruptors because in my opinion, that's the war. They do mention the thousands and thousands of other ingredients not being regulated, and we can squibble squabble over silicone, but I think endocrine disruptors is really what we're gonna look back on and regret using. That segues into the experts in the film. A lot of the experts are stemming from the medical field. They're the people doing the research. They're the people taking the biopsies. They're the people interviewing the patients and tracking data. And so when I see a cosmetic chemist deny everything, the research that they're doing, I just kind of laugh because we're talking about endocrinologists, some of the smartest doctors in the business, epidemiologists, public health officials. These people are leaders in their field and they're working at some of the most prestigious institutes. I really appreciated that her caliber of experts in the film was outstanding in my opinion. And so I wanted to quote one of the experts, Dr. Shruti Manglahai. She's an endocrinologist, reproductive surgeon, scientist at Boston University. I would say an expert in her field. She makes one of the best points in the film that I think is so important to this entire discussion. She says, once populations have been exposed and discoveries have been made about the associations, we have already lost a generation, which might be subtle effects on infertility. It might be more devastating effects in other aspects of development. I think we should be concerned. Exactly the point that so many of us are making. It's okay to be concerned. There are things that are concerning. Maybe we don't know them yet. Lastly, as we have seen with talc, legislation is going to be tough for so many reasons. Once we start putting legislation in place that involves who knows what, it's going to mean that people with the most money, Unilever, some of these bigger corporations are going to be the people setting the rules. They're going to be the special interest groups calling the shots. And that to me is somewhat terrifying. We've given the government a lot. I get so nervous about what possible legislation might look like and who it might rule out. Because right now I can seek out small independent formulators who are 100% transparent with me about their ingredients and their sourcing, and I can feel really good about purchasing and supporting them. And I just don't know with extended legislation, is that going to kick them out of the game? It's a discussion we really need to have, whether or not we want more legislation. And lastly, a critique of the film would be that there really were no cosmetic chemists involved. So it's really hard to have a discussion about personal care products and not bring cosmetic chemistry, the formulators of those formulas, into the discussion. And so already I think one of the huge complaints that the haters are attaching to is that there were really no cosmetic chemists in the film. So that's a little bit of a complaint against the film. I would have liked to seen them bring them together. One of the things that they talk about in the film is that when they got rid of parabens, they replaced it with slow release formaldehyde releasers. And formaldehyde releases are obviously a known carcinogen. So, you know, really complex discussions that the film brings up. So I think it is definitely worth a view. Take everything with a grain of salt. come join us at Green Beauty Theory, where we will be working to gain strength as a community, and instead of reacting to a lot of conventional beauty or fear-mongering, we will be discussing and trying to look in a broad sense at all of these issues. So yeah, join us there. It's going to be great. Green Beauty Theory. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.